Yeah, because we did have the group stages. Maybe some teams had already made it through, so then they could keep those teams for the elimination matches in secret. But now we can move on to our first match here. It is going to be Brazil versus South Korea. We can have a look at what has been already been brought here. South Korea have a pretty significant advantage that here because we are down to 7 games rather than 8. There can be no draws. That means South Korea just needs one more game to advance to the top 8.
Yeah, they only need one more game and they have 4 chances to do it. So it's looking really comfortable right now for South Korea. Even, it has been mostly 2-1s of the games that have been played, but still interesting to see, a lot of you still see a lot of the Zacian across the board, a lot of those really standard teams, but interested to see exactly what Caio brings because this could be a match that's really important. Brazil has to win the next 4 games in a row. So um, so they have to win the next 4 games. So instead, Wonseok, what he's going to be bringing for the South Korean team is a Calyrex Shadow Rider, Entei, Regieleki, Togekiss, Rillaboom, and Urshifu. And Togekiss isn't a Pokemon we haven't seen too much in these restricted formats, Jamie.
Yeah, we've seen the other 5 paired together quite commonly with that Shadow Rider, but Togekiss, yeah, maybe because of Zacian just existing, put people off from running that Togekiss because of that Fairy typing. But Fairy is a very good combination with the Calyrex Shadow Rider because it's able to redirect those Dark type attacks that people do tech onto their teams to try and deal with the Shadow Rider. Just completely redirecting it into the Togekiss means that the Shadow Rider does get freed up somewhat to still launch those Astral Barrages. Opting for the Togekiss over usually something like a Whimsicott there, so going for the redirection instead of the speed control. But you're already pretty speedy. If you've got the Shadow Rider, if you've got the Regieleki, you're going pretty fast in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we cut over to Wonsock's opponent, Caio, and see exactly what he's going to be bringing to this match, he's going to have the Zacian, the Incineroar, the Landorus Incarnate, the Thunderous Incarnate? Sorry, that's an interesting pick there. Tornadus Incarnate, sorry. Rillaboom, and then the Araquanid. And Araquanid is a Pokemon I absolutely love in front of Calyrex because it gets Wide Guard and it gets access to a couple of really nice moves that are, really great against a lot of these Pokemon like Kyogre and Calyrex and Groudon just because they've been running, obviously 2 target moves because that's what they're really well known for.
And it's typing pairs up into those picks as well really nicely. Water and Bug are not very common typing, but does resist some key things. Like the Zacian as well, it's able to resist the Behemoth Blade and the fighting moves that come out from it as well. And also running double Genies, something we haven't seen for quite a while. And double Genies does usually refer to Thunderous Incarnate and Landorus Therian, but we are going to be getting both Incarnate forms of the Genies here with that Landorus opting for the Sheer Force, trying to get that extra power down instead of opting for the Intimidates for their damage reduction instead.
Yeah, and Caio and Wonsock have both got absolutely incredible records too. I know we didn't touch on that, but both of them have been, absolutely incredible players. They're both very talented. So it'll be interesting to see exactly, how they end up pairing up against each other. And that Landorus Incarnate is something that we're seeing a lot really to tech against Xerneas because it has that really powerful Sludge Bomb move, especially with Sheer Force. So, I have to wonder if it will actually come to this game. Mostly just to kind of counter something like that Regieleki here or even that Entei. But there is still a really nice, there is still, the Sludge Bomb even for Togekiss if that actually comes this game as well. So just interesting picks all around, I think. But I do still love, Araquanid is one of my favorite Pokemon anyway, so I'm being very biased here.
And Raquan is definitely very reasonable into this matchup. But if you're facing down a Calyrex Shadow Rider, bringing your Wide Guard Pokemon is definitely a reasonable pick going into that as well. Thunderous could be going for some speed controls with the Thunder Waves or the Scary Faces it could go for. And you're not really usually facing down a redirection when you're facing down the Shadow Rider. It is often that Whimsicott instead. But opting for the Togekiss instead means that you can't get Thunder Wave or Scary Face if you just click that Follow Me when you've got the Togekiss next to the Calyrex Shadow Rider. It's going to open up much more options than for the Calyrex Shadow Rider than it would have had otherwise. It's going to be able to keep it safe from the paralysis, keep it safe from the dark type moves that could come out from the Incineroar as well. It is facing down the Zacian at least, so it's not going to be liking those steel type moves too much. But of course, we do get that little sneak peek. That is going to be a very, very on that Togekiss. So going to be able to take on that Zacian a little bit better and makes a bit more sense to be able to bring this Togekiss into the matchup because with that berry, it should be able to survive those Behemoth Blades coming out from the Zacian. And if you're able to survive that attack, that means that you're able to redirect one more attack away from your Calyrex Shadow Rider. And if you buy just one extra turn for that Shadow Rider, that might be all you need to start snowballing with those Grimnays.
Yeah, our very first game, though, our very first match, the leads from both of these trainers will be coming out. We see the Landorus and the Thunderous here for Caio's side, so two genies right on the field right away. And then we have the Calyrex Shadow Rider and that Togekiss, like you said. And because you said it's that Babiri Berry, we definitely know that is not one of those crit Togekisses that were very prominent in the very early meta of Sword and Shield way back when.
Yeah, this is somewhat nostalgic looking at Double Genies as a lead at this point, although one of them looks slightly off, but yeah, it definitely makes sense in this kind of meta to get those strong Earth powers. But Togekiss is in a very good position here, going to be able to keep that Calyrex safe from any of the practice shenanigans that the Thunderous could be getting up to here. And any time a type of surprise dark moves that could come out, like a Crunch or a Lash Out, it'll be keeping it safe from that as well.
Yeah, Incineroar switches in here, though, for that Landorus. So if there is a surprise dark move, it will be definitely on this Incineroar. Gets that Intimidate off. Most importantly, gets a Fake Out off for later. Thunderous will go for the Protect here, so it's not going to be taking any damage from either of these two Pokemon. And we see Togekiss goes for that Follow Me, so it will be taking any attacks, but it won't be because no one's going to be attacking this turn. While Calyrex actually goes for a Substitute here, so a really nice setup turn to be able to get it in a better position moving forward.
And that also means that you don't need to go for Follow Me anymore to keep it safe from Thunderwave. The Substitute's going to do that for you. That means you can just go on the offensive with the Togekiss if you want to, or go for any other of the support moves that has. It opts for Yawn quite often. You could be getting that Yawn down onto either the Thunderous or the Incineroar at this point. If you want to keep the Calyrex Substitute safe, you could still redirect the Dark moves that could come out from the Incineroar. If it's a Snarl, though, it wouldn't keep it that safe there, but it's actually going to be a Helping Hand coming out.
Yeah, Helping Hand from the Togekiss into this Calyrex, who is going to be able to launch off this move first, as there is no Fake Out here, interestingly enough. So it goes for that Astral Barrage into both of these Pokemon. With that Helping Hand, it is a ton of damage. It brings that Thunderous down to probably a Focus Sash here. Actually, no. Sorry, it is a Focus Sash. I thought it was invisible for 1/2 of a second there. And then it reveals the Life Orb as well on that Calyrex. It does go for a Thunderbolt, though, into the Togekiss. Does a really nice amount of damage. While the Incineroar here also goes for a Snarl, so that's able to do a ton of damage through that Substitute because it is that voice move and lowers that special attack onto both of these Pokemon.
Yeah, you don't want to be seeing the Snarl coming out on the Calyrex, especially when you're behind that Substitute, because it is still going to be in range of the knockout at this point. You're not going to be able to knock out the Incineroar with the Calyrex. You probably need help from the Togekiss, but not in the form of the Helping Hand. It would need to be its own offensive move at this point. And that means you're going to have a little bit of a weaker Astral Barrage coming out into the Incineroar, and then you've got to follow up with the Togekiss. Maybe if you've got something like an Air Slash, you could potentially be flinching that Incineroar to put a stop to the future Snarls coming out. And you're not going to be doing too much damage because you're not going to be having access to those crits that are going to be coming out more often when you are having access to the Super Luck. Because that Snarl has hit both the Togekiss and the Calyrex, you're really not going to be doing too much damage this turn.
Protect from the Calyrex, though, not going to be taking any damage. The Thunderous here also goes for another Thunderbolt. This will knock out the Togekiss, meaning it's not able to use that Air Slash that we did see it was carrying. So that means this Incineroar is still going to be pretty safe to fire off Snarls moving forward, unless there is a Pokemon that can Fake Out that switches in for Wonseok, which would be that Rillaboom. But he is actually not bringing the Rillaboom into this match, so which we can see from that little peek behind the screen that we have here. We'll be swapping in that Urshifu instead.
Yeah, it's going to be the single strike variety, not the rapid strike that we see so often. And that actually works out a lot more in Wonseok's favor here. That means it's going to be immune to the Prankster type moves that come out from Thunderous. If it was going to be the rapid strike, you could go for the Thunder Wave into the rapid strike to be able to allow the Incineroar to Snarl first. But because it is the dark typing, it's going to be immune to that. That means you just get to launch an Astral Barrage to KO the Thunderous and follow up with the KO with the close combat into the Incineroar. So sacrificing the Togekiss there, a really nice positional switch for Wonseok, being able to get that Urshifu on the field. And there's not really too much Caio can do about it. You can't stop any of the Pokemon with any kind of prankster shenanigans. The Thunderous is in range of the Astral Barrage at this point. You'll allow a Grimnay boost onto the Calyrex to cancel out the Snarl boost that was hit on it, put it back to neutral, and then you've got the KO with the Urshifu. So maybe there does have to be some switching around here, maybe switch out into that Landorus that we know is in the back to be able to take the fighting move a bit better, but it will still have to take an Astral Barrage on the switch in.
Yeah, the Landorus does switch in here for that Incineroar. Thunderous goes for that Protect right at the very beginning of this turn. Not going to be taking any damage from either of these moves, though. This is going to be a Sucker Punch, I believe, into that Thunderous. Will not go first, actually. Instead, sorry, the Astral Barrage here will not go into that Thunderous. We'll still be able to get some damage onto that Landorus, a really nice amount, well over 50%. Thunderous will hang on for at least one more turn, though. So this Urshifu is now the last thing to move on the field. It is able to go for that close combat into the Landorus. It is not super effective there. It does get it down just to almost the end of its health, but it does lower that defense and special defense moving forward.
Yeah, that may be better not KOing the Landorus there. That opens the opportunity to get 2 Grim Nade boosts with just 1 Astral Barrage at this point. And if you do go for a Protect with one of your Pokemon, and the Thundurus has already used that up, you'd have to go for a double Protect. If Landorus goes for the Protect, you're able to still just hit straight through it with your Urshifu. And you get to go for a close combat as well to cover for the Incineroar switch in. So it's really a tough position for Caio at the moment. So you have to choose whether you're going to give that Grim Nade boost to the Calyrex here, but then by doing that, you're just going to be protecting in front of it. So that is what the Landorus is doing. So at least you're only giving it 1 Grim Nade boost, but you're still going to get a double knockout because that Urshifu can hit straight through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see the Calyrex here is able to get that Astral Barrage off. This will easily knock out that last 1 HP onto that Thundurus. We'll get it that 1 single Grim Nade boost. And then, of course, like you said, protecting in front of an Urshifu is not exactly the best move to ever do because it can hit straight through it with that Unseen Fist ability. And getting that Grim Nade boost will be super helpful for whenever this Incineroar tries to switch in on the next turn. But it looks like it'll only be able to get, maybe 1 more attack off because of that Life Orb. So it is going to have to make the most of it.
Yeah, 1 more attack should be enough, though, at this point. With the Zacian coming in, you're going to be increasing your special attack back up to neutral, and you should be able to do enough damage into the Zacian in combination with the Urshifu at this point with the close combat. We'll have to see what kind of item the Urshifu is carrying, whether it is going to be that Focus Sash, because it will absolutely be brought down to it now with 2 minus stages of defense at this point. And Incineroar just needs to be able to get a Snarl off as well into the Calyrex if it wants to protect itself, or not go on the offensive with going for another substitute if it wants to keep itself alive that turn. The Zacian probably still going to be in range of the combination of attacks, so at least you get to fake out the Urshifu, so maybe just a double protect coming out on this turn, but that could open up the Zacian to be able to go for something like a substitute or maybe a Swords Dance, though a Swords Dance would probably be a little bit unnecessary at this point. It would only really be the substitute that could punish the double protect, but that has been dropped a lot more commonly for Play Rough at this point. A lot of players are opting for the coverage of all 3 attacking moves with the Steel Fairy and the Fighting, and maybe even just a Swords Dance dropping the Fighting move sometimes, so substitute has fallen off quite a lot on Zacian, but would be what you need in the face of this potential double protect. Otherwise, we're probably just going to get kind of a dead turn just to stall out the fake out from that Incineroar.
Yeah, we see the Protect from the Calyrex, and then also we were able to see, just peek behind the screen, the Detect from that Urshifu, so it is going to be that double protecting turn here, so nobody's going to be able to take any damage on Wonseok's side and just stall out that fake out here. And Incineroar went for the fake out into the Urshifu as well, so that won't be able to do anything here. Zacian went for a substitute, actually, so substitute Zacian is a really interesting play here. Won't be able to take any... won't be able to take at least both of the attacks here from the Calyrex and from the Urshifu.
Yeah, that's exactly the Zacian set you needed there. It has fallen off quite a bit, but still showing exactly why you use substitute so often on Zacian in past formats and in this one as well at the beginning. Because now the Zacian is probably going to win this game on its own at this point. But the Calyrex has to KO itself to its own Life Orb recall at this point. And you're only going to really be breaking the substitute on the Zacian. You could have done a lot more damage than just what it's going to be doing here.
The only thing with that nice peek behind the screen, though, Jamie, is we know that Wonseok has Entei in the back, which could be really helpful here. Zacian will be going for that move here. It actually goes... Excuse me. I could not tell exactly what that was. That is my mistake here, but that is enough to knock out the Life Orb is enough to knock out the Calyrex, and that was actually, sorry, forgive me, that was enough damage to get rid of that substitute. It was a critical hit on the Incineroar, or sorry, super effective on the Incineroar. Zacian goes for the Behemoth Blade. We'll go into the Urshifu slot here, so that will do a ton of damage. It should knock it down all the way to its Focus Sash, which it does. So now this Urshifu has 1 more turn to be able to kind of maybe do some damage here.
Yeah, and so now the Incineroar is going to drop to the close combat. The Zacian does need to 2v1 at this point. I can easily do that to the Urshifu. Any attack will blow it over at this point. I'd be curious to see how many Urshifus would get KO'd to a Play Rough at this point with -3 stages of defense. But yeah, the Entei is not going to be Choice Scarf at least, so that is somewhat of an opening for Caio at this point. If you do still carry a fighting move on your Zacian instead of the Play Rough that we've seen as well, then it could be able to get the knockout if you manage to get a critical hit on the Entei. And maybe the Urshifu isn't enough to KO the Zacian at that point with the close combat. But you do need to be trying to get the knockout here with the close combat, but it's not going to be enough.
Yeah, that close combat only does just, probably about 60% of that HP, and most importantly, it lowers both of the special defense and the defense. So when it takes a close combat here from that Urshifu, it does a ton of damage. Not enough to knock it out, of course, but now this Urshifu really could be blown over by a small gust of wind. While we see the Sacred Fire from the Entei goes into the Zacian, that is going to be enough to take this game for Wonseok. So a really nice way of protecting that Entei at the end of the game, to be able to come in when his Calyrex was knocked out from its own Life Orb recoil.
And it put in a lot of work in that beginning as well. Being able to get all the Pokemon in range of the Astral Barrage, you can see how tricky it is to play around that Shadow Rider. As soon as a Pokemon gets into KO range from the Astral Barrage, you have to play around the possibility of giving it a Grim Neigh boost. And so we got into a position there where the Shadow Rider could get two of them, and so you were forced to go for a Protect in front of an Urshifu, which is never something you want to be doing. But yeah, it's being able to put on so much pressure with the combination of the Shadow Rider and the Dark type Urshifu was really crucial, it being Dark type as well. If you're able to get the Thunder Wave into the Rapid Strike, that could have changed the game around somewhat, but not having access to that, that just freed up the Shadow Rider to just still be launching the Astral Barrages, and you still managed to get the close combat for free into the Incineroar slot as well. So definitely need to be careful of that combination as well. The Togekiss being able to keep the Calyrex safe enough so that it can get out the substitutes. You're probably not going to be protecting on this turn one with the Thunderous. A very passive turn coming out in the start allowed that substitute to go up from the Calyrex. That it was still open to the Snarls that were coming out from the Incineroar, but it kept itself safe from everything else and ended up just KOing itself to its own Life Orb recall at that point. But that substitute was all that was needed to open up the second slot so that you can't be Thunder Waves. You didn't need the Follow Me from the Togekiss anymore. So maybe knock out the Togekiss a bit sooner and try and take care of the substitute. Maybe not just rely on the Incineroar to be able to go for the Snarls, because we've seen the Urshifu can just take care of it very quickly at this point. So maybe try and take out the substitute to be able to free up the Thunderous to go for those Thunder Waves into the Calyrex. Put it slower than your other Pokemon. Would free up Caio quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think Incineroar is one of the Pokemon that Caio needs to be a little bit more protective over, especially that having Snarl, if that substitute is able to go up just whatever, these first few turns happen to be, it is going to be a Pokemon that he has to pay a little bit more attention and keep a little bit safer, I believe, especially, if he's trying to. Typically, you see with Zacian teams and Incineroars, you see a lot more switching around, but there wasn't any Intimidate on this team. There isn't any way to drop that Intrepid Sword boost that the Zacian gets at the very beginning. So at least you know right now that there's only one Fake Out, which is on that Rillaboom, and then there is no Intimidate. So Zacian, unless it's switching into something like a Sacred Fire or a couple of other obviously very strong moves that are on Wonseok's team, it is going to be in a little bit of a safer position than, say, switching in, having an Incineroar switch right in, and then immediately drop that Intrepid Sword boost that it really needs. Game 2 leads here, though. We're going to see Araquanid and Zacian in the very beginning, which I absolutely love. This is, again, me being very biased. But then we see the Togekiss and the Entei, so no double targeting moves from either of these Pokemon, because we saw the Togekiss has Air Slash. Zacian gets an Intrepid Sword boost, but it is going to be facing down an Entei with some Sacred Fire.
Yeah, but you've got the Araquanid that can threaten it as well. That may force the Togekiss to go for some redirection. Otherwise, you'll just lose your Entei immediately to that liquidation. It's definitely going to be strong enough to pick up the knockout there. But then the Togekiss is threatening some good damage with the Air Slash. You could be getting those flinches as well. And we've seen that it is Babiri Berry, so it doesn't really fear that Zacian as much as it would have done. So you could potentially go for the redirection, just keep the Entei completely safe, because you know you can survive the combination of the Behemoth Blade and the liquidation follow-up, and that would allow you to get the Sacred Fire into the Zacian. But then you do need to be careful of if the Zacian is going to be switching out there, because you could be scared of the fire type attacks that are coming out. But no, everyone is just going on the offensive here.
Yeah, Behemoth Blade goes right into this Togekiss, who eats its Babiri Berry, so it should be pretty comfortable to live this at this current stage. It is actually able to get knocked out, though, so really interesting that Babiri Berry wasn't enough to save it. It was a critical hit, it was super effective, so it did not show a critical hit there, but losing that Togekiss with that Babiri Berry is absolutely huge. Araquanid, though, able to go for that, is that Sticky Webs right there, just to slow the Pokemon down?
I think so. I've never seen the animation in game, but Araquanid does have access to Sticky Web. That gotta be what the move was. Yeah, that's a very interesting tech coming out from the Araquanid here. And we'll get to see it here. Is the Urshifu going to... Yes, it's going to drop its speed. That was a Sticky Web, so...
That is not a move I was expecting on this Araquanid. It is very tough for me to not be able to read Korean right at this very moment.
Yeah, that's an amazing tech coming out from the Araquanid, and it makes sense. You've got space for it on your Araquanids. You want to have at least one water move. You probably want Wide Guard because it's so good in this format, and then you usually opt for something like Leech Life, but then in this case, opting for the Sticky Web instead, maybe even opting for it over Protect. But yeah, the Togekiss, the Berry, are not able to save it. We did see that little red text pop up showing it was that critical hit, so going to be tipping it over the edge. You would expect with a Babiri Berry to be able to survive that attack, so quite unfortunate there getting the knockout. But then you didn't take a liquidation on the Entei. Instead, it was that speed drop in the form of the Sticky Web. So that means Entei is still sticking around here at full health.
Yeah, Zacian does set up a substitute, though, very first thing. So Zacian won't be able to take some Sacred Fire damage right now. It instead actually goes for that Earth Power here into the Araquanid, does a ton of damage, and then the Urshifu will go for its very specific move here into that Araquanid, is able to knock it out. Does, of course, get that critical hit as it does every single turn, so that Araquanid is at least off the field. But I think setting that sticky webs is going to be super important for it moving forward.
Yeah, it's going to give you a bit more speed control, especially with the Calyrex waiting, almost certainly waiting in the back. That means it's going to be slower than the Zacian. It's probably going to be slower than this Landorus as well. So yeah, it's a really cool tech coming out. And now you've got your substitute up effectively for free at this point. And now you can just launch off your attacks without the fear of getting burned by the Sacred Fire, without taking a really good damage from the Sacred Fire. And now you've got your Landorus in as well. You've seen that it's not Choice Scarf on the Entei. Landorus is just naturally faster than Entei, so most likely going to be able to outspeed and get the Earth Power into this Entei at this point. So yeah, it's a pretty good position for Caio. Being able to use that Araquanid pretty effectively. It effectively redirected the attack from the Urshifu and the Entei away from the Zacian because it would have got the knockout onto that Entei with the Liquidation. And so allowed it that free substitute here.
Interesting, we see the extreme speed, though, from the Entei, that priority move into the Landorus. Zacian will go for a Behemoth Blade here into either one of Wonseok's Pokemon. It will do a massive amount of damage. Into the Urshifu, it should knock it down to its Focus Sash, like we saw in that last game. Urshifu may be able to get another Wicked Blow off here, maybe just to get rid of that substitute. But it is still going to, be put in a pretty tough position here. Landorus is still able to go first, gets his own Earth Power off, able to knock this Urshifu out to keep that Zacian safe for one more turn, so that it's not able to take any extra damage.
It seemed like the Entei was expecting to take the Earth Power there, going for the extreme speed, just to try and get a last little bit of extra damage, but a bit of a missed opportunity to potentially break the substitute of the Zacian with the Sacred Fire, or get some good damage down into the Landorus. But yeah, that Sticky Web is going to come into play here. That means the Calyrex is not going to outspeed the Zacian or the Landorus, and it's something that I haven't seen for ages. I haven't even heard the name Sticky Web for ages at this point. So yeah,
I can see the cogs in your brain turning right now, Jamie, with all the team building options that you're thinking of.
You are not inaccurate there, mate. And yeah, that's going to be it. The Calyrex is slower than the rest of the team because of that Sticky Web, and that's going to be the forfeit. So yeah, an amazing tech coming out from the Araquanid, something we haven't really seen in doubles for a long time. We only really see what would be coined as hazards in singles, and like that's the Stealth Rocks and the Sticky Web. But yeah, there's the Sticky Web coming into play really well here. It just ensured that endgame pretty much in the bag for Caio, because that Calyrex wasn't going to be able to outspeed it, wasn't going to be able to get the Astral Barrages off. You could just pick it off with the Zacian Behemoth Blade. So really, really cool tech coming out here. So yeah, maybe if you do keep that Togekiss on the field on that first turn, most likely going to be going for an Air Slash. I think there was a Stone Edge miss at the beginning of that first game as well. So that double up could have knocked out the Araquanid. That would have put a stop to the Sticky Web from coming out. That would have definitely freed up the Calyrex in the back to be able to go for the attacks, because it would have been able to outspeed at that point. So a little bit of an unfortunate turn one coming out for Wonseok, but then being able to see the value coming out from those Sticky Webs was really cool. So maybe we're going to be seeing something similar. If the Togekiss doesn't get critical hits, we know it's got the Babiri Bear, it should be able to survive that. If it doesn't get critical hit, maybe you do get that double up into the Araquanid to put a stop to that, and maybe you just go for the Sacred Fire immediately into the Zacian instead, so that you can potentially get that burn and do a huge amount of damage to it. Maybe put it into extreme speed range as well. But yeah, I'm still worrying from that Sticky Web, because it's just so unexpected and it was so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very, very interesting. And it's going to be interesting to see because, like you said, hazards aren't something we see too much in VGC really ever. So nobody carries those tech moves that free your field of hazards on your side. Incineroar and Araquanid here, the lead, though, for Caio. So no Zacian in that front slot like we saw in that last game. It will be the Togekiss and Entei, however. So, again, you have to be wary of the Sticky Webs here. You're already getting that attack drop from that Incineroar. At least on your Togekiss. Entei won't worry too much about it because of its ability there, but you still have this fake out worry as well, so you may not be able to get that Araquanid knockout.
And the Entei at least can't be faked out here. Maybe you'd go for the fake out into the Togekiss, and you can just get a liquidation at that point into the Entei. You can't be burned with the Araquanids because of the water bubble. Sometimes people only think about the doubling of the water damage, but it also can't be burned, so it's going to be pretty safe from the Sacred Fire. Stone Edge on its own shouldn't be enough either, so I'm going to be going for the Helping Hand, trying to avoid that fake out coming out.
Yeah, there is a fake out here from that Togekiss, but of course Helping Hand has that higher priority, won't be able to do anything there. Earth Power is enough to knock out Araquanid, so no more Sticky Webs, sadly for both me and Jamie, I think, and also for Caio, because that is such an interesting move. But getting that Araquanid off the field early before it can do any of its fancy tech moves, I think, is a really smart play from Wonseok.
Yeah, that's exactly the turn one you want to be seeing if you're Wonseok. You take some fake out chip. Maybe that puts you in Behemoth Blade range at this point because you're probably EV to just be able to survive. So any extra little bit of chip damage could put you in range of that at this point. But now you're taking care of the biggest threat to this Entei at this point. You get to keep the Entei safe if you go for the follow me. And then you get the Sacred Fire down into that Zacian. If it goes for a substitute, it's not doing the good damage to the Togekiss, and definitely not going to be if it's going to be going for the Protect here.
Yeah, it goes for the Protect, though. That Sacred Fire from that Entei, we have to assume, is not able to connect here. Togekiss goes for the Air Slash, though, into the Incineroar, possibly hoping for a critical, for a flinch here, which it looks like it got. So that Incineroar not able to get any moves off this turn onto either the Pokemon on Wonsook's side.
Yeah, that's just a positive for Wonsook at this point. You've used up the Protect on the Zacian. Now you can still very safely go for that Sacred Fire into the Zacian. And you've just got a little bit of extra chip damage on the Incineroar as well. So yeah, it's a bit awkward for Caio here, but still going to be able to go on the offensive. So we'll have to see if that extra bit of chip damage from the Fake Out is enough to put this in range for the Togekiss.
Yeah, and we saw exactly, with a crit it was able to knock out. It is not this turn, though, because it hangs out with 9 HP thanks to that very important Babiri Berry. Sacred Fire from the Entei into the Zacian is not enough to knock it out, but it also gets the burn, which I think is even more important here. So the Zacian now on a timer. Another Air Slash from the Togekiss into the Incineroar, and another flinch there. So Incineroar not able to move once again.
It seemed like we traded the fortunes from that game 2 into this game 3, so now Wonsook is getting the better end of it at this point. Getting 2 flinches there is pretty key with the Incineroar not being able to most likely try and pivot out with the parting shots at this point. And you've got the burn on the Zacian. Maybe it's going to be in range of an Extreme Speed coming here, especially with the Helping Hand boost.
Zacian is able to go first, so no extreme speed here. This Behemoth Blade will most likely go into that Togekiss slot, which it does. It is able to get that last 9 HP off of that Togekiss. A very easy knockout, at least for that Zacian to take, even with that burn. This does mean, though, that this Entei is able to get an extremely powerful Earth Power off here, and it is able to knock out this Incineroar. Doesn't bring it down to a low HP or proc a berry or anything here, so this Incineroar is now out for the count. Zacian is at very low HP with this burn. Araquanid is already out of the game, so that means there's only one more Pokemon left for Caio, and he's got to take on 3 of Wonsook's Pokemon.
And it's quite smart to ignore this very low HP Zacian as well. It's pretty much just Grenade food at this point. Because it's so low, it's going to be in range. So ignoring it, going for the Stone Edge instead into the Incineroar, getting that KO, that's the only Pokemon that's going to be able to take the Astral Barrages very well. Now that that's gone, the Araquanid's gone as well, there's no potential Wide Guard anymore. The Zacian is just going to be KO'd at this point to the Astral Barrage. Probably not enough to KO the Landorus, but shouldn't be able to respond with a KO of its own. So really, you just get to click 2 Astral Barrages at this point. Maybe just an Astral Barrage and a Sacred Fire would be enough as well. But yeah, it looks like it's just going to be the Extreme Speed to try and put it in range of that Astral Barrage.
Yeah, and Extreme Speed does a pretty nice chunk of damage to that Pokemon. Astral Barrage should be, of course, eating up Grenade food, like you said. 2 Grenade boosts here. That is going to be the game for Wonsook. So an absolutely incredible move here. I did say Earth Power instead of Stone Edge a bunch of times, so I am sorry. That is my bad there. But an absolutely incredible, game from Wonsook, realizing how important it is that he doesn't get Sticky Web because he then loses his speed control over, because his Calyrex is moving faster than the Zacian was at one point. So, making sure that there is no issue with that Araquanid and with any Sticky Webs, which is, again, a tech you don't expect. So really nice to be able to get rid of that right on turn 1. Not have to worry about it. And then, of course, not getting crit on your, not getting a critical hit on your Togekiss and allowing it to live for at least one more turn to get that helping hand into that Stone Edge to knock out that Incineroar is absolutely huge. So, again, sorry I said Earth Power a bunch of times, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and so I must say, even though it lost, Araquanid is going straight into my team builder with that Sticky Web at this point. It was so cool to really counter the Calyrex because it relies on being faster and just spamming those Astral Barrages before the opponent can attack. But as soon as you take away that option to move first, you're going to be frail enough to be picked up the knockout by the Zacian. So it's a really, really cool game 2 there, but really identified what needs to happen in that game 3. Take care of the Araquanid a lot quicker, immediately on that turn 1. It does now put South Korea at 4 wins, so that means that South Korea will be advancing into the top 8, and unfortunately Brazil has been knocked out in this top 16 here. So unfortunate for Brazil, but congratulations to South Korea. We're just going to jump to a very short break and we'll be right back with the next game.